Radio. Spätkauf. Berlin News in English.
It's October 15th, 2023. This is Radio Spätkauf, Berlin's news podcast, recording live at Podfest Berlin. We're here at Noisy Rooms in front of a very nice audience. I'm Matilda Kaiser.
I'm Izzy Choksi.
I'm Anna Marie Harrison, and I'd like to welcome special guest host Drew Portnoy from 20% Berlin. Drew, if listeners have forgotten what 20% is from the last time we had you on, could you give them a little reminder?
Of course. We're a twice-weekly newsletter, English language newsletter, bringing news to Berliners who don't speak German. We just want to give access to what's happening in Berlin to people who haven't yet learned about der, die, das, and accusative and dative and
Gross things like that.
And passive-aggressive.
Coming up on the show, invading hornets, sex scams while fishing, and threats to ice skating season. Plus, we talked to Tim Wechselmann-Kasim of Letzte Generation and Rachel Stewart from the new podcast, Don't Drink the Milk.
But first, some short news.
All right, this might start us off with a bit of a somber tone, but I just wanted to say the news headlines this week have been incredibly difficult to digest. And while we are a humorous show about the news, there are absolutely no jokes to be made about the Palestine-Israel conflict. Acts of resistance and solidarity have played out in Berlin in a Neukölln school, on Sonnenallee, at the Brandenburger Tor, all over the city. Things are tense. There's not a lot we can say about this that won't unnecessarily re-traumatize listeners, so we're intentionally sidestepping this topic and urge you all to take care of yourselves while following it. All right, now to funny bits.
All right, I'll start off with something a little bit lighter. A man in Karstedt-Galen, Brandenburg, fell victim to a fraudulent sex chat scam while out fishing. As you do. The 35-year-old fisherman was contacted on social media and persuaded to take part in a video chat and strip down to his birthday suit. Later, the man received a nude video of himself and a message warning that if he didn't pay a certain sum of money, the video would be shared online. The 35-year-old blocked the account and told the police. And since this is Germany, he wasn't even embarrassed. He's probably making money off of it now, actually.
Would you? How would you guys deal with having you dancing naked out in the internet?
I mean, FKK forever.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, all right, have a look.
Exactly.
I don't know. What do you want me to do?
Come. It looks good.
It looks good.
It's not going to look as good as
You're welcome.
Yes. I'm never going to be as hot as today. So let's get it out there.
Exactly.
Berliners are still taking loads of drugs, but apparently we're doing it very responsibly nowadays. So responsibly that the free drug checking pilot program is completely overwhelmed and facing funding cuts only 4 months after inception. Folks can bring their drugs to 3 counseling centers to be analyzed for impurities, all done anonymously, free of charge, and without penalty. An average of 50 samples have been analyzed a week since the project started, with a pretty high percentage of contaminated samples, 30%. According to the program's director, he says most people who get their drugs tested do wait for the results to consume them, so the initiative does absolutely save lives. Hopefully, the Berlin House of Representatives will correct what was referred to by local politicians as drafting errors to get the project more funding during its next phase in December.
30% is quite a lot.
Yeah.
So be careful, folks.
The one thing that I wonder is how many people do actually wait an entire week.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that was my first thought, but he specifically said in the article, people wait to take their drugs.
People say they wait to take their drugs.
Exactly. Well, maybe now people wait if they hear that 30% are contaminated.
Yes, so listeners, 30%, so do wait the week. Save your own lives.
Yeah, take the drugs that you didn't submit for the sample while you're waiting for the
Also,
drugs.
they're sending people home right now because the lines are too long to get the drugs tested. So, give it a shot. Try to get your drugs tested. Maybe just don't take drugs. I don't know.
I was going to say, maybe we're just going to become one of those podcasts that says, don't take drugs.
Exactly. I don't know. That feels like a big move. I don't stand by that.
Do you think that's changing our personality too intensely?
I do. I really do.
You could change it to don't do drugs now.
Yeah.
Like
Wait.
in the next hour.
Radio Spätkauf. Don't do drugs. Now.
Yeah.
Great.
Until we're done listening.
Remember how early in the early days of the pandemic, the so-called murder hornets showed up in the US? Well, don't worry, the ones that are around here aren't murder hornets, but apparently an invasive species of Asian hornets have shown up recently in Schöneberg. A big nest full of non-native hornets from Southeast Asia were carefully removed from a tree in the Bavarian Quarter on Friday. Who knew we had in a Bavarian Quarter? I
did. Bayerischer
Yeah.
Platz.
I was gonna say it's over in the part of Berlin that
It's
people
so
who don't
rich.
speak German don't go to.
That's true. But I will say there is a great gastroenterologist in the area.
Oh, yes. Can
Yeah,
confirm.
We love that guy.
We do.
Dude, we've all been to the same one.
And now for our segment on stomach issues.
So it's the first time a nest of these hornets from Southeast Asia have been spotted in Berlin, but thankfully they're not an extra threat to humans. They do, however, pose a problem for our local honeybee populations and therefore are going to be taken in for further studies.
How do we feel about the bed bug plague
In Paris.
in
So
Paris?
scared.
We're scared,
terrible,
right?
yeah.
So we are
Scared.
scared. Yeah.
But also not. Apparently it's psychological distress that is the thing that you really need to worry about. They don't hurt you or spread
Don't they bite?
disease.
I
They
thought
do bite.
They bite you, but they don't actually cause like long-term issues and they don't spread disease. It's the psychological effects of having bugs in your bed and you're just like up all night apparently.
And yeah, notoriously Berlin is great at solving psychological distress. So can't wait for them to come.
Yeah.
Good at being up all night though, so that runs in our favor.
On Monday, the BVG had to reduce the frequency of trains on the U3. That might be the source of Izzy being up all night that you hear at the back in the background of this. Is a little bit. On Monday, the BVG had to reduce the frequency of trains on the U3 due to cable theft. According to the BVG, more than 40 cable thefts have been recorded so far this year, with total damage amounting to 850,000 euros. Okay, I just found this out through this article, and I was like, do people know that cable theft is a thing? Like, have people heard of this?
Well, I mean,
okay, I'm glad, because I went down a rabbit hole. Apparently, it's happening all over the world, and people are, the UK and the US, this is a big issue, and all the train companies are having to, like, find alternatives to secure their train lines, and they're employing drones, and they're getting the police force on it. And it's basically just because of the copper wire that people are stripping to sell them for scrap.
Yeah.
I think it's also one of those kind of socioeconomic indicators.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where this is like, how is the economy going? Are our copper wires being stripped down and sold? It's going really freaking badly, So yeah, I think it's just one of those things that happens sort of every 50 years. And now it's like at the end of the neoliberal era. So yeah, no wonder.
Is it the end?
Is it?
Wait, are we finishing?
Oh my God, thank God.
Izzy, you heard it here first.
You heard it here first, guys.
The
I called it. I
neoliberal
called
era is ending.
Cheers.
I think it's just easy to steal. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Why?
Right.
But do you know, does anyone know why? Like, because
Yeah,
to
'cause you
me,
can't-
this would sound very difficult.
You
to
can't
do.
trace copper. Like, all you got to do is take the plastic wire, plastic coating off of it, throw it in the back of a pickup truck, and you can sell it. And nobody can say, hey, you got this from Deutsche Bahn. Hey, you just say, no, I took this out of my dad's old house.
Okay.
It's super easy to get rid of.
That's
Super easy.
smart.
Yeah, it's easy to move.
Okay, so
Should we
basically,
do crime?
yeah,
Should we
this
steal?
episode is like take drugs slowly, steal some copper wire.
But not if you want. I think also, yeah. I mean,
There's,
we all know that like train delays fuck up our lives so badly. So like, don't do it because we all need to get to places. And, just be solidarisch.
Whoa, that's a nice little intro to our guest later on from Letzte Generation here. We all need to get places.
And to some bad news for ice skaters in this frosty season, lots of local ice rinks are closing. Where are children going to learn that they can, in fact, break both wrists at the same time? And adults be reminded that true humility is falling on your ass 10 times in a row. The winter is not just about the energy prices either. The Erika Hess Eislaufstadion in Mitte and the Eisstadion Neukölln are closed for the foreseeable future due to new legal requirements for the ammonia cooling systems used for icing the rink surfaces. The These requirements include emergency plans to be drawn up to protect employees and residents in the case of an accidental release of ammonia. According to the Mitte District Office, this would require expert opinions and calculations to be prepared by external institutes.
Which would be too difficult.
Such a surprise that bureaucracy ruined something in Germany.
But I will say, if it does get cold enough, everyone just goes to Engelbeck. So,
I was going to say, what about those plastic ice rinks at Christmas markets?
yeah, right.
That's where I break my elbows. All right, so yeah, speaking of crime, we'll just continue with the crime meme here today. While we're all intentionally forgetting to scan an item or two at the self-checkout, prosecutors suspect the two top executives at car-sharing company Miles, or as we call it here in Berlin, MILFs, have been doctoring GPS locations for its cars to lower its parking bill for years. Investigators Wednesday searched company offices in Berlin, the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, and Vienna, sort of random, as well as the homes of the two unnamed top executives. They're accused of avoiding up to 30 million euros in parking fees by manipulating the locations of the cars. The locations are transmitted automatically to calculate fees. The CEO, Oliver Makprang, has railed against parking fees for years, saying his cars pay up to 200 euros per month to rest on Berlin streets, while a residential parking permit costs just about 20 euros for 2 years. And I mean, he's totally right. It's way too cheap to leave your car on Berlin streets.
Yep.
And I say that as somebody who leaves a car on Berlin streets. Yeah, I'm an awful human. Actually, I just have 2 kids. Let's hope this isn't the end of Miles because, yeah, I love seeing MILFs. I just think...
Yes, I will say that there's few things that bring me daily joy as seeing the ripped off of a Miles car.
Yeah.
Every single time I'm like, huh.
Mills.
Like I have a child. It brings me. Whoever does it, if you hear this, thank you.
You're a hero.
The other day I was standing next to a Miles car and I was thinking about that and I thought, bro, you can do it too. Yeah. So I am responsible for, 2 MILFs because I have a wife.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is Drew Portnoy, a comedian.
Admitting to
Check out
vandalism.
his shows. I will say that I find it exceptionally problematic how cheap it is to have a car in Berlin. Like, I think I do think that we should be investing more in car sharing companies. But then it's like, oh, come on, MILFs, don't fuck it up. You know, it's like just pay it and let's get rid of the other cars.
Now, I did the math. Like, even car sharing is also too cheap. Like, you save so much by not having a car. Cars are just a money hole. Like, it just
Get rid of your car.
Yeah, Drew.
Yeah, well, yes.
Drew?
Yeah,
Drew.
okay.
Drew.
Let's all go out and set it on fire. Let's go.
Yes!
Yeah. I don't care. So that car. There's no reason for him to fake the fees. Like, he should raise it still cheaper than owning a car.
Yeah.
It's just that he's competing with public transport.
So, Germany's love of the fax machine is the butt of half of the expat jokes in the world, apparently. And last month's fax hack was legendary. But how many are really still around in government offices? Earlier this year, politicians asked Berlin's administration, and the answer is 5,333. 5,333 fax machines, guys. The city's Department of Interior Affairs, Digitalization and Sports alone has 1,422 fax machines. The same report found that 189 local government services still required a fax.
That's too many.
Okay, so we're going through the school Anmeldung process right now. So it's our latest mountain of bureaucracy to overcome. And what's absolutely hilarious, and I think a lot of people are finding this more and more, is like, oh, there's a digital process for doing an Anmeldung process. There's a digital process for registration of something, registering as a student, registering for Elternzeit, registering for school, all of this kind of stuff. But you still have to print off the PDF
Right,
of course.
once you've filled it out and take it personally in your hand to the school that you want to go to. It is absolutely insane.
But you don't have to fax it.
That's true.
The
Come on,
most
Izzy.
digital thing that we have here is being able to use like Doc Hub to fill something out and then carry it physically to somebody. That is what digitalization is here. I had that. We were just talking about like the KSK. Like all I would need to, I have to tell them one thing. Like I could so easily tell them through a formula online. I could just tell them this piece of information.
Just tell
But
them.
I could literally just be like, hey, news
Guys.
for me. This is what's up. No. I have to like print, send letters. And it's like they want the paper trail more than any. They're just thirsty for it. They're just like, give me more.
So
Like,
I missed quite a lot of news over the summer, but wasn't there a news story about Berlin or Germany running out of paper because of the amount of bureaucracy that we have? And Berlin had a paper shortage inside of its amps? And did
Did
that
anyone
happen?
hear this?
That's
we
a
cover
beautiful. I mean, the thing is, those of us who've been in Berlin a long time remember when Berlin was so broke. If you wanted to do anything at the Amt, you had to take paper with you so they could print it.
Really?
Yeah, you had to take your own paper.
We're back to
no.
that.
Yeah. And then they would give you your Anmeldung back on the piece of paper you took with you.
That's incredible. That's
wanna live in that
beautiful.
Berlin.
Beautiful,
I
yeah.
will say when I got my first ID done in Italy and I was 18, Italian IDs were made, the carte d'identità were made on paper, and I went to my local amt basically, and there was like a huge line, it was full, and then this one woman comes out and screams, "We're out of paper."
Can you say it in Italian?
Non c'è più la carta per le carte d'identità. So she does this. And so they gave us all free bus tickets to go to an amt in a different part because they hadn't run out of paper because it's like a special paper. So, I will say now that I have a card ID, things are looking up for Italy, you guys.
I'm just impressed by an Amt that comes up with a solution.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
in Berlin, they'd have been like, "Nah, we're all going home.
Exactly.
You guys are on your own."
As we're currently recording from Podfest, we thought it'd be exceptionally apropos to have another pod on our pod as guests at Podfest. So for a real podception, we'd like to introduce the brand new podcast, Don't Drink the Milk from Deutsche Welle, which delves into the hidden history of familiar things. David journalist and the show's host, Rachel Stewart, is here to tell us more about it. Please welcome Rachel to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, okay, first off, what's with the name? Why can't we drink the milk?
Okay, so pretty important to say straight off, it's kind of metaphorical milk that we're talking about.
All right.
We're not making a statement. It's up to you guys if you drink milk or not. We will feature milk at some point in the season, but not straight off. We don't want to confuse people too much. Basically, the idea is that we're finding something that started off somewhere in Europe, and then it goes on this journey. And as it goes through different countries and cultures and eras, it changes along the way for some reason, and we look at how and why. It's always got a bit of a controversial element to it as well. So the idea of don't drink the milk could be a bit like a warning, don't drink the Kool-Aid, that kind of idea. Coming across curious stories, curious people, and kind of linking it to modern day debates as well.
And so you told us a little bit of what the show is. How did the idea for the podcast came about, and what's important about the hidden history of familiar things?
I guess the best way that ideas come up is always just a brainstorming session with a couple of beers involved.
Yep.
We were just batting around ideas, and we were all really interested in history, but not in a kind of history lesson sort of way, right? Like, I'm not a history nerd, but I love finding out curious backstories to things. So we were kind of trying to find stories that are relevant to our everyday lives, but have this kind of basis in history and information and actual facts that we can go and investigate. And we're really going places. So we're going to these places in Europe, finding the stories, finding the people, and trying to make connections between cultures and countries that you might not have made before.
So really, like, what you're saying is that Deutsche Welle has a budget and you're spending it.
This is an excellent assessment, and I'm enjoying it. So,
Can you give us an example of one of these hidden histories of a curious, familiar thing?
yeah. So one of the first episodes is going to be about passports. So the idea of just looking back at how did that even begin? Like, why do we have this document? Where did it come from? How has it changed since it got introduced? So we look at the ideas of, as well of statelessness. So everyone thinks everyone's got a passport and citizenship. Obviously not the case. We look at that all around the world, including in Germany, actually. So we've spoken to someone stateless in Germany who's struggling with bureaucracy that we just heard. That's one of the biggest problems. But we'll also be looking at things like IPA. So is that just your favourite craft beer, or is it a colonial hangover? Spoiler,
Oh,
it's
I
the
thought
second.
You were talking about International Phonetic Alphabet. I was like, somebody else cares.
We'll save that for season 2.
Indian Pale Ale.
Exactly. But I was also feeling a bit inspired by some of the things you guys were talking about earlier. Maybe we should be looking into FKK. That could be a great word.
That'd be brilliant.
I think I think it'll be great.
I don't think it has. Yeah, I think it has some bad. Well, sure, why not? Go dark.
Well,
Sure, go dark.
Is it a
This is
dark
Germany.
history?
No,
of FKK?
the DDR
Yeah.
Museum, Alexanderplatz, which is an excellent visit.
Absolutely.
Everyone should go.
Us.
FKK has its own placard. It has its own information section, and it talks about how it was a way for citizens to combat state repression.
Yeah.
This is me. This is my body, and the state can control everything about my life, but they can't control the way that I take off my clothes.
Yeah,
next to a Z.
there's also, I think, an East German song. It's like, Naki die, wir sind alle Naki die, Naki die.
Oh, we've got our jingle sorted for that one.
Let's
Great.
get back to our
Okay,
guest.
but you have to do the podcast naked. I mean, the podcast naked then, right?
No one will ever know.
Yeah.
So you're currently working on an episode about homeopathy, which I think most of us who've lived in Germany have been faced with in some way or another in pharmacies or at doctor's offices. Can you give us a little sneak peek about the history of homeopathy in Germany?
But also, are you only going to tell us like a little bit about it?
How long
Are
have we
you
got
going to
here?
tell us like a teeny tiny amount?
Like a
Just
point
like
zero zero
a-
zero
It may
zero zero.
have
I have to
absolutely
credit
nothing
that joke
involved.
to Patrina, who's working on Podfest. Shout out to Patrina.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been fascinated by this topic since I moved to Germany. Just the way that it's woven into society here and not really questioned, and just everyone does it kind of. It's not necessarily some people believe in this type of alternative medicine and other people believe in Schulmedizin and traditional medicine. It's very much mixed all together. In the pharmacy as well, you're confronted with it, like you said. So I just kind of went down exploring that route, found out that it all started off here in Germany, in Meissen, not just known for its pottery, but also for being the home of homeopathy. And then was really fascinated to find out that some of the biggest markets around the world today are India, the USA, and Germany. And just thinking they've all got such different healthcare systems, cultures. So how on earth does that end up being the case, several hundred years after it was invented? Why is it still here?
Do you delve into the kind of dark Nazi?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't have an episode on anything that comes
dark,
from
dark, dark
Germany
Nazi.
without at some point referencing the Nazis. So of course they will be there.
To be fair, homeopathy is probably as effective as the American healthcare system.
Yeah.
Helps just as many people.
Absolutely.
True
Why
this.
not?
When I moved to Germany, it was the first time that I heard someone write a number on a piece of paper and then put a glass on it and let that. It was anyway.
Oh,
Wait, what is this?
It was like
Sorry, is this a thing everyone knows?
did the
There was
number
something-
infuse into the water?
yes, so it was
Wow.
like a number of some kind of active ingredient, and it could infuse into the water by letting the water rest on it for a certain amount of time before you consumed it.
Mhm.
Wow.
I don't understand.
But I will say water is healthy.
water is so good for
So
you.
I actually don't think that had any negative effects. I do recommend a glass of water every now and then. But I got deep into the rabbit hole of New Germanic medicine, which, Nazis loved herbs. Just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask about, did anything, well, without giving away anything from the episode, but I mean, you said you're looking at how things stay kind of culturally relevant. Did anything surprise you specifically about homeopathy?
I mean, first of all, I would just say I've also learned to understand why people use this now. I think through doing the episode and researching, I get it now. So this is not just about trying to disprove homeopathy in this episode. It really is about the interesting side of it. Why do people use it? Why does it get intermingled into a culture so much? We actually spoke to, there's one former homeopath who became she speaks out now very much against it. She's basically the biggest whistleblower, I suppose, in Germany. And I spoke to her, and she also had a very, really nuanced view of it. So, yeah, I think it tells us a lot about a society. It tells us a lot about the healthcare that is available, what politicians are willing to support and why. So, yeah, very curious topic.
Okay, now I'm desperate to listen. So,
Yeah.
where can we go to listen to that episode and other episodes of the podcast?
Classic, anywhere you get your podcasts, you hopefully should be able to find us. And for anyone who is also a visual person, we will be doing little bits of video content on YouTube as well.
They also have budget for that.
Now you got
I
it.
mean,
Fancy.
that's me with an iPhone, so that one's not costing too much.
Deutsche Welle spends its budget on two things: Rachel's shows and the CEO. The intendant of Deutsche Welle. Those are the two people making money.
He will be featured on the show. No, he won't.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can find us at DW Podcasts on YouTube. But don't drink the milk everywhere else.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you,
you very
Rachel.
much.
Thanks for
A
having
round
me.
of applause for our guest.
Cheers.
Cow.
All right, back to some news. They had a big meeting about what to do about all the crime in Görlitzer Park. And our mayor, Kai Wegner of the conservative CDU, his big idea is to build a fence around the park by the end of the year. That's just one of the many things. Like cutting funds to social projects is also another part of the thing.
What a guy.
Yeah, beautiful idea. Anyway, so he announced that we're going to build this park around it, and the gates would be locked at night, he said. And he said it's just like Central Park. He said, we're going to do this just like Central Park. And anybody who's ever been to Central Park went, what fence?
Yeah.
And so, because the New York Park is now, like, it used to be one of the least safest places on Earth, and now it's actually one of the most safest places. And they say it's because it's locked at night. But then Tagesspiegel talked to a criminologist who actually knows something about New York, like most of us. And the criminologist said, no, that's not true. There is no big fence around Central Park. Wagner was spreading fake news. So Central Park is officially closed from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., but there's no fence. There's just this little, it's a little, stone wall going around the thing. It's not anything at all. Central Park does have its own police force, and even if Berlin fancies itself a Weltstadt in the same league as New York, let's be honest, it's just comparing big apples to Berlin's oranges. It doesn't work.
When has a fence ever stopped crime?
It helps crime.
Yeah. And it just creates a space in which people feel even more pushed to the outside. Instead of focusing on projects that help people, on integration, on drug rehabilitation, on safe drug consumption spaces, it's like, we build a fence.
I think we're also forgetting the most important point here is that on the way home from a night out, if you live in Neukölln, getting home from Kreuzberg, getting home to Neukölln, I'm sorry, no, that fence is not going to last because of the inconvenience that it's going to cause, and people are just going to bash it down because they're going to be coming back from a night out and be like, nah.
And so now we know what Izzy does on her nights out.
And of course, we are we're not talking about the horrible incident that happened in Görlitzer Park a few months ago where a couple was assaulted and...
Trigger warning.
Yeah, a big trigger warning where a couple was assaulted and the woman was gang raped. The belief that to help rape, you build a fence.
Help stop rape.
Help stop rape. You build a fence is just astounding.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, it just shows the absolute...
You have to remember Wegner's from Spandau.
Right, that says it all.
But also the CDU, does anyone remember when the CDU for 2 years, every single night at Görlitzer Park, they had a police presence there? This was 5 years ago or something. And it did not do anything. It didn't help with crime numbers at all. There were just more arrests, more people being, put in very precarious positions. And
it's the same situation at Cottbusser Tor that we have the Polizeiwache there now. It's
and crime went up.
Of course,
crime
it's what? No, what? Of course, because there's more policemen making arrests.
Yeah.
But it hasn't changed anything. Sorry, this is very upsetting to me.
That's all right. We understand.
Tell us your real opinion, Matilda.
Okay, quick question for the audience. Where do you guys go to connect with nature or the expanse or to take a break in the city?
It's a genuine question.
I'm putting all of you on the spot.
Plenterwald.
What was the other one?
If you want.
Outside of Berlin altogether. All right, Brandenburg, sure.
Works
Anywhere
for
else?
skin tone?
Inside? Parks? Big spaces?
Oh, okay.
So
Visitor from
doesn't come to
Bonn.
Berlin for this experience at all.
Fair enough.
He likes to see where his tax money's going.
Yeah, fair.
Any other spaces in the city?
Weissensee.
Parks.
Weissensee.
What's Rummelsburg.
Rummelsburg.
Yeah.
That's a very nice one.
That's
Close
very
to
nice. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, it's vital to have a place for some deep breaths when city life gets extra harsh. When the angry Aldioma has elbowed me in the ribs one too many times, and I really need a place for a good sad girl cry. This is Tempelhofer Feld for me.
Me too.
Yeah, it's good for sad girl cries.
It was good for screams in Corona times.
Yeah,
You
that
could go to
too.
the middle of the Feld, and they'd opened, I think, most of the spaces, so you could literally just go into the middle of the Feld and just scream at the top of your lungs, and then go home to a toddler who you had to look after and work 24 hours at the same time.
Who just screams at the top of his lungs in the
Exactly. He was screaming all the time.
Feel free to just scream wherever.
So we use it for free therapy, basically. And we're not the only ones. Almost 200,000 visitors frequent the Feld per week and report that they do so to get this feeling of expanse. But our big, beautiful urban space is in jeopardy again. Maybe you've heard in the German news media that the Berlin CDU and SPD ruling coalition is proposing an urban development competition to build housing on the edges of the Feld. It's just the edges, they say, so it's fine. This is despite the 2014 referendum that outlawed building on the 300-hectare grounds of the former airport.
So the space has been open to recreational use since 2010, and politicians have basically been wanting to build on it ever since. This time, the CDU-SPD coalition is trying to convince us that it's to give us what we leftists want, a solution to the housing crisis. Obviously, yes, Berlin desperately needs housing. Anyone looking for a flat is intimately familiar with that fact. According to the city's 2019 urban development plan, we need 194,000 additional apartments by 2030. But there's space for 200,000 new flats in Berlin without touching the Feld.
Interesting fact that they don't seem to be talking about. CDU, I'm looking at you. And no, it's not like they're proposing 100% social housing. So this idea that they're giving us leftists what we want is horseshit. We don't need to get too freaked out yet. So far, the competition itself is still just a proposal and not set in stone, but there is money already being allocated for the competition, and it kind of seems like there's some shady behind-the-scenes negotiations going on, not to mention the property development connections to the CDU, which I will shamelessly plug. You can read all about in my upcoming article for Ex-Berliner magazine coming out October 29th. Obviously, I have some opinions on this. I think we all do.
Can I point out two things?
Please.
Just because in my old life as a journalist.
Don't point out three.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Good deal.
Just do.
Number one, the CDU has said they're going to actually have before they build, they're going to have another referendum. So we will get to vote on it again.
Cool.
To be fair.
And by
They
we,
didn't
you
say-
mean
do they
anyone with
actually say
German
referendum?
citizenship.
Yeah.
But I think it's really crucial. Are they going to open it up to the whole city, or are they just going to have Neukölln and Tempelhof like last time? Because
No,
if
it's
they
going to be
open
the
it,
whole city.
if they open it up to the whole city, then they know that they can win that.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just open to Neukölln and Tempelhof last time.
The
No,
last time
wasn't.
was.
No, it was the whole
No.
city. It was
The
the
whole
whole
city?
city-state. Yeah, it was the whole thing.
Oh,
Everybody.
okay. I thought it was Tempelhof.
Yeah, but
No.
is it everybody, or is 25% of Berlin not allowed to vote?
Yeah.
That's what's 23%. Yeah.
Sorry.
How many?
Yeah.
20?
Because
Something about 20,
Because
right?
it was 20% when
It
I
was
started my
20% when we started the letter, and now it's
20% when we
23%.
started my newsletter. Now it's
I guess
23.
I'm just saying, like, people are like, ooh, sign my things. I'm like, gladly. I'm just worthless in this city.
Yeah, I just want to. And the second thing is the reason they keep picking on Tempelhof is because that belongs to Berlin. They can do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
They don't have to pay anybody. It's free. They can just move in there. And then, okay, I will make a third point. Sometimes you go.
Don't you dare.
There we go.
You go to Tempelhof, and right now on the edge are people parking their campers. That's the edge of Tempelhof right now. Is camper storage.
Oh, on the street.
Is that a bad thing?
No, there's a parking lot right next to the thing that's that's part
On
of
the
what they-
airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, we could get rid of the camper storage. We need to keep the rest of, but that one area where the people are just storing
Hard to
their
find a
campers.
place to put your campers.
Yeah.
Just say.
Fun.
Just
Niche
say.
problem.
Yeah, do you want to know why they do that? Just a quick point on campus. If you get it off the street, you don't have to pay tax on it for the whole winter. So you put it in a lager, a storage place, and you don't have to pay tax on it for the whole winter. And then you get it out and you sort of re-register it, and then you can drive it around again. And it's safer than leaving it on the street. And it takes up less space.
All right, so Izzy wants the whole Fed to
Just
be
say- just say-
parking
just say.
for campers.
It's very small, though. It's very small.
Hey, but you have solved the housing crisis.
Yeah,
in
there we
your
go.
Very own
Put
way.
campers.
That felt like a pitch for Izzy's RV world.
Yeah.
Don't it now?
Yeah,
But maybe-
we're literally just back from 3 months in the camper.
Oh,
So.
but while we're talking about housing, maybe it is important to say that Deutsche Wohnen and Eignen has started their second signature campaign,
Absolutely.
which is the referendum is now attached to a Gesetz. So please, if you haven't done so yet and your signature matters, even if it doesn't, let's send a message to the city that we still want affordable housing.
Absolutely.
So please go sign.
And you can always canvass for signatures even if
That's
you can't
correct.
vote yourself,
That is
which is
correct.
very, very necessary, especially with the colder months coming in. We will need people out there getting signatures.
Yeah. And do check out a lot of the wonderful events that Right to the City and Deutsche Wohnen Enteignen are putting on now all around the city in order to get more signatures.
Okay, so one thing that Berliners and an increasing number of British people have in common is that they both hate Tories. Not that many Brits in the room here, I feel. So for Berliners, however, far from being a nickname for the Conservative ruling party, it's a term of non-endearment for tourists. Berliners are not known for their totally snuggly welcome to visitors. I mean, how do you feel coming from Bonn? Do you feel like you've been welcomed with open arms?
Lovely people, honestly.
So lovely people, honestly.
See, that we're
Okay.
not bad.
Do we have any real Berliners in the room right now?
He's blinking SOS
That's
with
a
his
no.
eyes.
So instead, Berliners proudly put on a stereotypical Berliner Schnauzer. I feel like I've pronounced that right.
Yeah.
Whenever possible. However, tourism does generate a huge amount of money for Berlin's economy, and it accounts for around 6.6% of the city's total economic output. Those were figures from 2019, before the pandemic. The city also directly employs around 11% of the city's workforce. However, it also indirectly creates around 455,000 jobs in the city. So, however, during the pandemic, tourism took a massive hit when visitor numbers went down to just 5 million in 2020 and after an all-time high the year before of 14 million. So here's the news bit. Numbers have taken a turn in the last year, back towards growth. In 2022, the city welcomed 10.5 million people, less than before the pandemic, but a huge increase from years before. And this year, it's looking even better. So the first half of 2023 saw already 5.7 million people visiting the city of Berlin, which is a 30% increase from the same period the year before, and about 86% of where the city was at before the pandemic. So we're not quite back to where we were, but we're getting there.
Can I just say, on behalf of all Berliners, get the fuck off the bike path.
Yes. Sorry, I hit that too.
That was said with a level of Berliner Schnauzer
Yeah.
that you should be proud of.
Yeah.
Finally, in honor of Jöran, we are going to bring you some football news. I never thought I'd be able to say this. Big football news. Germany is hosting the UEFA Euro 2024 and tickets are now on sale. The final is going to be held in Berlin and tickets for the game are going on sale for as much as €1,000 for the final. This is just the first round of ticket sales with the 1.2 million tickets set to be awarded this time around. But the difficulty for fans is that they have no idea what games they'll be getting tickets for, as the draw to see who plays who in the first stage will happen in Hamburg on the 2nd of December.
Did anyone do this besides me? I actually.
Did you?
Yeah.
Can we,
All right, there's some real football
show
fans.
Of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4
Whoa,
people in the
amazing.
audience and Anna Marie.
Yeah, I'm. That's kind of a joke. Sports. There's a ball involved, but I put my name in. Okay, I want to go.
But
Yeah.
how much money did you?
You don't have to pay anything. You sign up, and then it's like draw system to see if you even get a ticket. And then if you are confirmed to get a ticket further down the line, I think it's spring next year. Anyone? Does that? Yeah. You don't find out until spring if you got a ticket, and then you pay the amount, and it was like 40 something euros.
Okay.
You can sign up for the ultra fan right behind the the thing. What's it? Lost goal.
The goal.
Joking.
You
I do
sound
not
like
recall.
an ultra fan. Yes, you do. Anna Marie, you sound like a football ultra fan.
So I did that. No, I did not. I felt that was too much, but
No,
exciting.
Because for the World Championships in 2006, it was great, man. You got it sounds dumb now, like you don't know where you're going, but then it's like you're forced to take a trip to a city you kind of want to see anyway. You know, like
so all the cities that are a part of it are potentially good to see. It's not like in the middle of nowhere.
well, it's just Germany.
I didn't know that cities outside of Berlin were good to see. Yeah.
So we are welcoming our second guest of the show, Tim from Letzte Generation, everyone. So
Hello everybody.
So for the last year and a half, Letzte Generation or Last Generation have rarely been out of the news. The weekend before last was no different. This time the group used a new technique to blockade a street, not just using their bodies to sit in the way of vehicles, but instead blockading the road, with vehicles brought onto the A100. Delays of around 30 minutes were caused for car users during the blockade, and around 300 police were deployed to break up the blockades. Here with us today is Tim from Letzte Generation to talk more about the change in tactics of the group and give us an update on the government's progress in finishing off the R100. So I guess first off, what are the objectives of Letzte Generation at this point in time?
Okay, well, it's actually pretty simple. We kind of want to make sure that the German government actually does what it's supposed to do, namely safeguard our future and our basically do what isn't his responsibility, safeguard our constitution and move away from the usage of fossil fuels by the year 2030.
And can you talk about like a shift in the way that the group plans on conducting itself and doing protests? Because I read somewhere that Letzte Generation is thinking of doing less like confrontational protests and stopping cars and kind of more engagement. Is that the case, or you're shaking your head? Fine.
Well, I mean, because we're really growing and we've been doing this for a while, and the fact of the matter is we have a very diverse set of even tactics and forms of protest. I mean, we've already blocked the 100 like a year ago. I sat on the 100 as well, but it just keeps on expanding because there was more and more people joining and people wanting to do different things. Some are ready to do these kind of things, and others, prefer to just sit on the road, and even others, again, just want to do protest marches. So it's not that much of a shift in tactics, but more of just a sign of us becoming bigger, I would say.
And what is the current situation with the progress of finishing off the A100 here in Berlin, our very own Stadtautobahn?
Well, it's you already talked about Kai Wegner, right? And it's not looking good, not in any way or shape or form.
Shocks me.
Yeah, it's shocking, but this doesn't come as a surprise, not to us at least, and I don't think to anybody else. And I think, if anything, we're pretty adamant about, saying that we have to do something big and actually protest and actually get onto the street and create this huge disruption for anything to change. And be that the stopping of the 100, but this would only be a small part of it, right?
What do you think, aside from obviously disruption and protest, particularly with the 100, we've seen a lot of different types of disruptions, whether it was rave the Autobahn, block the Autobahn, block the building of the Autobahn. We even had guests here who had proposed different things that could be done, building hydroponic gardens inside. What do you say to people who believe that these disruptions are actually going against the cause rather than for it?
Not to be too offensive, but generally speaking, I would say that by and large, a lot of people still haven't quite understood the gravity of the situation that we're in, and they kind of hold themselves or hold this belief that, we only have to stop this project, or we only have to make sure that we get a shift here or plant some more trees there or something like this. But the situation is much more dramatic, right? It's already 12:05, and like stopping the 100 won't save us. We really need this kind of huge, large-scale societal shift, which in our eyes is only going to come about if we get like thousands of people who are willing to get themselves arrested for what they believe in, and that's what we're trying to work at.
This is my question, because I gave you guys money. I'm a big fan.
I love that.
But I'm
Is
curious,
it because you have a car and you
Because I
need it
have
to
a
feel
car.
better?
He feels bad. He feels bad.
It's a CO2 offset that I'm donating to. No, but I'm curious from the inside, like how many charges are you facing and what charges?
It might be a bit embarrassing, but honestly, I don't even know, because it's you kind of stop counting at some point. I'm serious, and I think they probably, like the Staatsanwaltschaft, they probably know, and it's always a bit strange because they tend to drop certain charges because they say like, okay, you've done so many other things that these small crimes, we're not going to prosecute them. But yeah, I've blockaded, I don't know, over like 20 streets or so, and also participated in different actions. I just got a letter like last week that I'll be standing in front of court again a month from now, and I'll have to defend myself for the crimes that I've committed.
Your mailbox is just yellow letters. Just
Oh yeah, that's actually pretty stressful, getting home and always opening up the letterbox and you're like, but yeah. but it's fine.
I can't imagine the kind of bureaucracy that you're facing.
Yeah, it's a lot of letters. But the good thing is, you get used to these kind of things, and the only thing you need to know is if the letter isn't yellow, you don't really have to care about it, or at least it's not that. Sometimes they send you have to pay for like Klebegebühren is what they call it, and those are the ones you should also open. But yeah.
How much are the Klebegebühren, which I guess translated to people who don't speak, it's the price you have to pay for them removing the glue from your hands.
Yeah. So it's 241 euros, and the Mahngebühr is 5 euros. So if you miss it, it's usually 246 euros, and it's for each time that you glued yourself to the road, right? And this doesn't have to do anything with the legal consequences of you having to go to jail or anything, but it's just the money you have to pay. And there's been a lot of back and forth of whether this is constitutional, whether it's allowed in the first place. So we've had to pay it for a while, and then they said we can't pay it, and we don't have to pay it anymore. And then now we had to pay it again, and now we have to. Now they said, okay, you don't have to pay it anymore again. So it's just a sign of us kind of.
Do you pay it, or are you just declaring bankruptcy?
Me personally,
Yeah.
or I'm still paying them, or at the moment.
No, I love the fact that so a lot of people just use the loophole of declaring bankruptcy.
Yeah, but it's a pretty shitty loophole, right? Because you're like basically indebted or enslaved for like the next 30 years, and every euro that you earn more than 1,300 euros a month you can hand over to the state.
Yeah, I mean, I think just on that point, we're kind of like speaking quite lighthearted about it, but let's kind of catch on. Like, members are putting themselves in financial hardship. They're also putting themselves in the way of potentially being like physically assaulted by people coming at them, and you're also potentially setting yourself up for a record that could last your entire lives in terms of employment, in terms of like financial woes. Like these are not consequences that you're taking on lightly. And I guess a lot of people at home, maybe who are less aware of like the climate crisis than you are, then they would be wondering like, why do you do it? Like, why do you put yourself in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, because also so far this has been pretty fun here, right? But it's always like, the climate guy, you come up and you kind of you don't want to kill the vibe, but as I said, the situation is incredibly serious, right? And you're right. I've got friends of mine who've already been to jail because of their activism for over a month at times. Just this week, a friend of mine got a letter from like Eurowings, saying pay 125,000 euros by next Wednesday, or because of you blockaded the airport and everything. And yeah, like a few weeks ago, I was like in the blockade I was in, we were attacked with, a guy came up with pepper spray, actually attacked us and everything. But the thing why I'm talking quite lightheartedly about it is because all of this is really quite irrelevant compared to the situation that we're all facing, right? And that really all of us are going to face within the next 10, 20, 30 years. And we hold talks twice a week, 3 times a week, and people can show up if they wanna know how bad it really is. But we're quite literally talking about billions of people losing their homes, people dying, and potentially the collapse of modern human civilization as we know it within my lifetime. And that sounds pretty dramatic, but the more you read about it.
What can you say to people who are beginning to feel a certain sense of disillusionment with fighting the climate crisis because of what we see around ourselves? The lack of commitment, the lack of actually wanting to change, and the frustration that what is feels like a loud majority is expressing to movements like yours.
That much more many people. So to everybody who's saying, I'm disillusioned, I think it's all hopeless, it's all lost, I would say, come to Letzte Generation, get yourself arrested and do something about it. And if you're then, if you're still disillusioned, fair enough. But at least you tried something. Yeah.
So just, I guess, a plug for a podcast that you've also been involved with, and we interviewed you as well for. Anne-Marie and I have been making a podcast over the last 9 months, I think it's been now, called Sticking Point, and it is the voices of Germany's climate movement, and Tim is one of those voices. We are on our 3rd episode. It should be coming out later this week.
This is a spin-off of Radio Speckhoff. You can find it on the same feed if you haven't already listened. It's right there for you.
And I think I would just say, making that podcast, what astounds me is, the political process and the democratic process has so far completely failed to address the climate crisis. COP28 is coming up. 28 means that there have been 28 others that have failed, and we need a 28th in order to, so you just think, the political process, the democratic process has completely failed to address the climate crisis. And yet people like Tim and other people that we interviewed on our podcast are still completely and utterly dedicated to the democratic process fixing this problem. And I think that's what has astounded me making this podcast, is just the faith that you guys have in democracy, that democracy can be the thing to solve the climate crisis. Because if you just look at the facts, it's like, why?
And also, what I'd like to say to anyone listening to this or hearing this who is frustrated or thinks civil disobedience is actually ruining the commute of young mothers or people going to work, civil disobedience has been known to change the world. So sometimes we do need to go back to the classics.
Yeah. Before we let you go, Tim, I wanted to ask on this note, because in my interview with you for our spin-off series, Sticking Point, in case you didn't get that.
Voices of the German climate movement.
What was it again? Available on all platforms. You said how these interactions with people on the street sometimes, like I remember you saying sometimes even the policemen who are keeping you in one space or arresting you, even conversations with them, these kind of face-to-face conversations end up being quite surprising. And this idea of changing hearts and minds in these person-to-person interactions, can you add anything to that? Do you see people's minds being changed right in front of you?
Honestly, I really do, and it's rare that people say something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, we love what you do. We love Letzige Nation. We love that you disrupt people." But people tend to come out and say, "Okay, we've understood that there's a problem, but we don't really like the way you go about it." And we're like, "Yeah, of course, we hate it as well." As soon as we have enough people that join us and actually being willing to be arrested, we could much more easily go towards blocking larger streets or even blocking the Bundestag or something, which is actually what we're going to do on the 28th of October, and where we kindly, wholeheartedly invite everybody to come by. It's going to be Saturday at the Siegessäule. You can really just show up. You can just check it out from the sidelines, but you can also join in and show this willingness of saying, okay, I'm ready. I'm sick of it. I know and I understand that the situation is this desperate and that our political system, the way as it's run now, isn't going to solve it. I think we all know this, right? Everybody here in this room. We know that the way that things are currently going on, we're not going to solve the issue. And we're trying to get people to then take the next step, make the decision of, okay, I know that in the current way, things are going to shit. Billions are going to lose their homes, potentially lose their lives. So we have to try something new. And this is what we're trying to do. And if anybody of you is really willing, to take the step, check out our website. We have trainings, we have talks all the time, everywhere in Germany. And it's really just about you. If you make the decision, we'll find a way of getting you arrested, or at least supporting what we do. We're experts at this.
First person I've ever met who wants me to get arrested. It's like,
yeah, we talked a lot about crime here, right, and about drugs and whatever.
right.
But this is like a really good thing to and
Good
also
crime.
Here's
good
how
crime.
you can get your yellow letters too.
Amazing. and it sounds ridiculous, but this is always what I think to myself. Yeah, we've tried everything. Everybody's disillusioned. Everybody knows it's not going to work. But we haven't tried to get 5,000 people, 10,000 people arrested.
That might be hard.
No, but it really isn't, I mean, it really isn't, not anymore. We've been doing this for 2 years, and you don't have to do it 20, 30 times. You don't have to attack the Brandenburger Tor or get in a fight with Euro Wings or something like this. You only have to have this willingness of being arrested once. And if everybody here in this room does this once, and we get 10,000 people to do it, change might actually happen, because this is historically how change has happened.
Yeah.
Sounds like a group trip waiting to happen.
Yeah, please.
Do it, guys.
Road trip to jail, baby.
Not to nail it home too much, but yeah, they wouldn't be able to handle the bureaucracy of this.
That's the entire point about
yellow
it.
letters.
You understand how busy the fax machines would be.
Can we say a final massive thank you to Tim for coming on the podcast, and a huge round of applause.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much.
All right, we're going to have Dan on for a quick message that is maybe a bit of a different tone to the
Drew,
rest
did
of
you
the
want to
show.
plug any shows or anything?
Anyone have any upcoming shows? Drew,
all my
comedy?
shows are in German that are coming up. You can follow me.
A lot of our listeners are Germans. It was a really amazing thing I discovered mainly from buying stuff on Kleinanzeiger.
Okay.
You can. The best place to find me is Comedy Flash. If you just look on the Comedy Flash, or you can look on my website berlinerisch.com and you find all my dates. That's where when I'm performing.
You can follow me on Instagram to find out when and where I'm performing at Matti Kaiser.
And I just want to plug our podcast. The third episode is coming out this week. Sticking Point. You can listen to the other two on the feed, on the Radio Speckhouse feed, wherever you listen to podcasts.
I've also got an article for Ex-Berliner magazine coming out, which, you could buy it, and you should. I don't see that money, but you could also wait for it to come online, probably at the end of the month or next month.
I think Ex-Berliner still owes me money from like 10 years ago.
They absolutely still owe me money.
Me too.
All right, and now to Dan.
I'm going to read something Joel wrote for me, and he's... I don't know if anyone, none of you here, but I tried to do we were supposed to do an episode recording about a few weweeks ago. It didn't go well. I'm just going to read this. No, it's fine. I'm good. If you follow us online, you probably have already heard this news. But this is our first live recording in months, so it's the first time we've addressed the podcast listeners directly. The news that we never wanted... The news that we never...
The news that we never wanted to deliver is that our co-founder, co-host, and friend Maisie Hitchcock died on the 9th of August. She had suffered for several years from the effects of a rare type of ovarian cancer, and this is a tragedy that has really struck us all very deeply. It was not a surprise, but it is a huge shock, and we are still processing it, as are many of you, no doubt. Our co-host Joel is currently working on a special episode dedicated to Maisie. It is taking him a while because this is very hard for him to do emotionally. Please forgive us for this delay. Keep sending us in your memories of her and your favorite moments for us to include in that episode. Maisie would have wanted us to go on enjoying life and loving Berlin, so that's what we're going to do.
Thanks, Dan.